it seems like a big leap, but the interest that I have in entrepreneurship, in startups, but also in Startup Weekend, is actually the focus on the person, on the founder, on the entrepreneur. So I'm more keen on understanding how they work, they tick, and how they create magic, rather than the magic that they create.
So here we are at Startup Weekend Auckland 2019. It's a Sunday, and I'm here with Pascal. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes, you're right, Pascal. Pascal Ibou-Perron. I'm actually French, but I've been in New Zealand for 20 years.
Oh, wow. Pascal, I can't pronounce that last name. I've got a very difficult last name as well, so I can relate. Yeah.
Okay, good. But that's the good thing here, right? New Zealand, straight away we interact with people and they call you with your first name, so that's not a problem, right?
Exactly. But my cousins will be able to say your name because they live in France. So I've got grandparents and relatives in France and cousins that only speak French. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe we continue that conversation.
Oh.
You know, I'd love to know where they are.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd love to know where they are. I come from the southeast of France, and so I've been in New Zealand for 20 years, and I am actually based in Tauranga.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so I arrived in Tauranga in 1999, last century, and I was a teacher. I was actually a secondary school teacher, and yes, for anyone who wonders, I was a teacher of French. So that was the job that brought me here. That's where I come from. So I bring an education background to the startup scene, if you want.
So connect me to what was your journey from secondary school teaching French to startups?
Yeah, cool. So it's mainly two things. There's an educational journey there. So working in schools in New Zealand, really interesting to since 2000, 2003 with NCA, etc. We're looking at, and the New Zealand curriculum that came later on was really much around putting the ownership of learning onto the learner. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was something that really interested me on how I could do that. And it took me a while to find a way, but when I finally found a way, I was ready to leave teaching.
Right.
and maybe because I didn't think that I could be really effective within that system that is education at that time to actually continue exploring what that looked like. So it seems like a big leap, but the interest that I have in entrepreneurship, in startups, but also in Startup Weekend, is actually the focus on the person, on the founder, on the entrepreneur. So I'm more keen on understanding how they work, they tick, and how they create magic, rather than the magic that they create. So I'm interested in the capability building of the entrepreneur. I'm interested in understanding their journey as a person into the world of startup. So this is where I come from. So there is this background in education that has given me some frameworks that I can actually apply to the journey of people while learning a totally different context, how that can work.
That's very interesting. And do you find that learning happens in these weekends in a very effective way with this framework of a startup weekend?
Yeah, and that is the thing that has certainly been the most difficult thing at the time I was still in secondary school here in New Zealand was that we were looking to put authentic learning experiences, and how I describe Startup Weekend is as an opportunity for an authentic learning experience, something that you learn by doing, some place where you are actually asked to bring your whole self and the skills that you have, but also the things that your aptitudes and the person that you are into the weekend, and actually test how that works under an element of pressure. So Startup Weekend brings, that finite length of 54 hours, which creates that frame to contain the experience. And what happens throughout these 54 hours is actually a small microcosm of what can happen, if there's more length. So, so that's where this education piece links to the format of this event that I'm particularly interested in, and I've been supportive of since 2013.
And since 2013, have you mainly been doing events like this?
So again, I was saying I'm in Tauranga, and the first time I became acquainted to Startup Weekend was then in 13. I bought a ticket to participate at Startup Weekend Tauranga. By then I had left teaching, and I had been doing a few other things. I had set myself up as a service provider to schools. This is what I was doing after I left teaching. So I had effectively taken a step out of teaching and set myself up as a solopreneur, I don't want to call myself a consultant. And then along the way I met some people. And in 2013, we were already toying with the idea of starting Venture Center, which is the organization that I co-founded with 3 others in Tauranga.
Cool. And I'm guessing since then, you've seen a lot of entrepreneurs, you've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. What has been something that you've kind of taken away that if you were to meet a new entrepreneur now, what would you tell them? What are some kind of key takeaways that you've learned that you can tell them?
Okay, so there would be 3 things from that person. So the first thing would be really know who you are, know yourself, know what you're good at, be able to articulate how good you are at what you do in a way that is productive. Being able to actually also know your weaknesses, so that you are more open to find complementarities. So that would be a really number one thing. And some people are quite naturally able to know their good things and work on where they are maybe weaker, but not everyone. So that would be really this type of learning about yourself work that I would do first, or I would do anyway. That would be the number one thing. And in doing that, I think that leads to a second thing, is when you know more about yourself, you're more able to build a team. And entrepreneurship is a team sport. It's really hard to be able to do it all by oneself. So while some people would prefer, for whatever reason, to be by themselves, I think that finding those like-minded co-founders who are going to work alongside you to solve one of these wicked problems that we have around us, by creating some solution that is really, really going to be a game changer. Hopefully a game changer for our people, for our planet. There's just so much to address, right? But you're able then, by knowing yourself, to actually form teams and being. I think that what I want to say is that team is effectively going to be working better together if everyone within that team knows who they are intimately. Okay, and startups are complex. There's a lot of moving pieces. They can go fast. They can also being very bad endings to them. And often, what is it? The ending is we run out of money or we don't get on. And often the two are linked together. So if we never have money to start with, or very rarely, and at least we've got one another. So how do we make that work? So that's my second thing. And the third thing is you need to be prepared to learn something new. Because along the way you will meet people that you will seek advice from. So seeking advice means being prepared to receive advice. It's also being able to have some ability to position what you're doing, and it's also being humble in front of what needs doing. And also these are really key markers from what I understand, where investors, when they will hear a pitch, which eventually is a pitch for investment, they will behind this, what they hear and the numbers and the solution that you present to them, they will look at everyone in the team, or they will look at you and they will really, do I have a person that I can coach or that is prepared to learn in front of me? And that would help them very rapidly make a decision. So that's what I would say for our entrepreneurs. Know yourself, know how to build a team or being part of a team, and demonstrate that you're open to learn something new.
Beautiful. And on that note, linking it back to education, do you think you'll ever go back to the world of education with what you've learned from the startup space?
It's really interesting because I think that learning is everywhere and education is everywhere. It's just the attitude that we have towards it. So that's maybe another podcast around, where I see a formal education and educational institution being. The work that I do in Toronga with Venture Center can be summed up in some ways as community education in some way, where we short track the time for people to find the meaningful connections that they need to move forward, and from these connections learn from them. So it all goes back to how prepared are you to learn something new.
All right, okay. Very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Pascal. What's happening now?
What's happening now?
Yeah.
Well, it's Friday afternoon. Okay, all the teams have had their final pitch practice. So we're here at the Grid in Auckland, and I've come in to facilitate the event. So this is something I've been involved on. I mentioned that I was a participant in 2013. Since I've organized 5 startup weekends in Toronga, or helped organize or seeded the organization of, and also been involved in helping other teams up and down the country. I'm very fond of the support that I've been getting from people in Taranaki, in Tairafiti, in Nelson, here in Toronga, and now to be invited in Auckland, where we are all working together as community leaders, being able to plant that entrepreneurship seed in our cities and regions.
Lovely, that's awesome. Well, very exciting, intense time leading up to the final presentation. Yeah. I'm guessing this, in the grander scheme of things, is what a startup would go through in terms of getting ready for that pitch, that investor pitch. Yeah. This is what they're going through. Yeah. What have you noticed over your years as the best thing that teams can do right now to prepare for that pitch for the judges? What should they be focusing on?
In the context of Startup Weekend?
Yeah,
sure. So, go back to what you've heard from the mentors. Go back to your lean canvas, which is your process on how you go there. Stick to where you want to go. See through what you've been told, and then just go to the finish to tell the story of your weekend. So it's really the ability that the team has to sieve through all that they receive to finalize their pitch for the judges. It's going to be outstanding. It always is.
Yeah.
It always is.
Oh, cool. I could honestly keep asking you questions, but I know you have to get back to it, but maybe for another time. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. That's very cool.
Cool. All right.